Hey, what's going on, Agents for Life? Welcome to podcast 234. I can't believe we're up this high. 234 podcasts. I'm glad you're here. I've got some fantastic stuff that I want to share with you. But first, before I jump in, a couple of announcements. Number one, just a gentle reminder, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. Dallas Leadership Conference. You've heard it from me in the past. You're going to hear it from me again. July 22nd. You've got to get yourself to Dallas. Get the tickets in the email. When I sent this, there's a link where you can go to purchase the tickets. However, you get yourself there, all the leadership at Equus is coming together, and I really want to make sure you are there. You don't have to be a leader already. You just have to want to be a leader. So we're looking for leaders. And if you're on that list, get yourself to Dallas. You will not regret it. Whatever sacrifice is required, I promise you it's worth it. Okay, enough of that. Quick lesson from the field. This one's a funny one. So I went to a graduation and listened to, we were at an outdoor arena, and I guess they didn't test the audio. I'm not sure what happened, but we could not hear. In fact, here, listen, this is exactly how it sounded.
Now it's true. Individually, what we have achieved as supers. Thanks to high school, I understand my passions.
Okay. Did you catch that? So I didn't either. But I turned to my wife and said, I feel like I'm in Charlie Brown's teacher's classroom, one of the students. Because we just couldn't hear. It was all muffled. There was ambient noise, but the speakers weren't great. And it got me thinking a little bit, um, as agents, we sometimes we're not very clear in our message to our clients. We speak insurance ease, if it's a language, right? And instead of speaking insurance, we need to speak English. And we need to be very clear, and we need to slow down. This is where I sometimes have a problem. I'm the first to admit it. I have a tendency to talk fast. And I think I just even last week, I had an appointment that should have closed. I think I overwhelmed them. And you might be doing the same. We have to simplify, find the problem, ask lots of questions. Before you present, ask, ask, ask. Get clarity, and then present 2 or 3 well thought out price options. That's it. Not 10 different strategies and 12 different products and different, no, like sometimes our messaging just needs to be very simple and very clear. Now, what does that have to do with graduation? Well, I don't know. It was an experience. I couldn't hear very well, so I was confused. We were bored. It was not a great inspirational type message. I'm sure, I mean, for us, it wasn't. I'm sure it was for those that could hear it, but we didn't get anything out of it. So your clients might not be getting much out of it as well if you're not clear on your message. So let me just leave that right there and let's move on to our training, because I want to spend the rest of this podcast on this training. I've been reading again. I read this years ago. It's called The Secrets of a Millionaire Mind by T. Harv Eker. And it's an old classic, and it's a lot to do with how our brain works. And I'm going to go and just recap and insert my own thoughts on part one, because I think it's worthy of a podcast. This is really, really good stuff. Okay. So, number one, he talks about a financial blueprint. You go to build a home, you have a blueprint. That's how the home's going to turn out, is following the instructions from the blueprint. And we all have inside of us a blueprint that if we don't change, it's going to automatically build our life in a certain way because our life is patterned after the blueprint. So change the blueprint and you change your life. And that's what he's getting at. These are not tactics. These are not surface level things. This teaching is not, here's a quick get rich quick thing. We live in an instant gratification society. So we don't want to do the work to change ourselves, but that's the only work that matters, right? You do first, you be first, then you do, and then you have. And a lot of times we have it backwards. Be, then do, then have. You have to first become. So this is the deep work. This is the subject we're talking about, is doing that deep work down inside of you that can change that blueprint on the fundamental, foundational level so that the outcome eventually catches up. Okay, so some really deep thoughts here. Hang with me. So I want to talk about this next section that I highlighted so much. I think I ran out of my highlighter 3 times before reading this book in its entirety. There's so many pages here. It's all lit up like a rainbow. This, just a little, it's unlearning sometimes what we've already learned. I think this is a quote from Mark Twain. It's not what we don't know that gets us in trouble. It's what we know that just ain't so. We've all heard that. Sometimes what we think we know is wrong, and we have to be open-minded enough to unlearn what we already have learned, because you may have learned things the wrong way. And I say may because I'm tiptoeing lightly, but really I should probably be more direct. Do you have the results in your life that you want? I'm raising my hand the highest. I don't. I'm looking for more. I'm looking for something different, looking for better, right? We're all on the journey. Well, if you don't, it's probably because the way that you've been doing it isn't exactly right. So you have to unlearn some things. You have to be humble enough to admit that, maybe I don't have all the answers after all. All right, let's talk about roots and fruits. This is cool. I love the analogy of the tree. You go to a tree well, let's take our fruit tree. I have in my backyard, I've got 2 peach trees. Love them. They're like my favorite. I love peach season. In fact, we are about a month away from beautiful, juicy fruits coming on. But let's say that the fruits came bad. They were bitter or whatever. Well, I can't go outside and change the fruit. Okay. The fruit is what it is. It's too late for me to change the fruit once it's already there. So what do I have to do? Well, I have to change starting in the root system so that the next crop of fruits are better. Okay, so you don't have fruit right now. Maybe you look around and you're not where you want to live, not driving what you want to drive. Maybe you don't have some of the things that you want to have in life. Maybe you haven't achieved a certain level of success. Well, you can't just snap your fingers and change all that. You got where you are today because of all of your past programming, thoughts, decisions, everything that's led up to this point. So you can't immediately change everything all at once, but you can change tomorrow by starting a new root system today or nourishing the roots in a different way. So the roots and fruits, the roots create the fruits. The cool thing about that is the roots are all underground. That's the stuff that we don't see, right? You can't go outside in your garden, look at the trees and analyze the roots because they're all buried and covered up. Same thing with us as people. Your neighbor might look good, smell good on the outside, and put on a nice smile, and all of his Instagram posts reek of, wow, he's successful and he's doing great. On the inside, though, his roots might be deteriorating. So we have to go in and do the deep work, the work where people just can't see, because that's the place where the sun don't shine. So this is the roots. The roots produce the fruits. If you don't have the fruits, you can't change them. You got to go change the roots, or you got to go nourish the roots. Okay. So we can change tomorrow's fruit. We can't change today's fruit, but we can change tomorrow's fruit. That's what he says. Okay. So this is talking about inner world and outer world. He says a lack of money is never, ever the problem. A lack of money is merely a symptom of what's going on underneath. Let me say that again. A lack of money is not the problem. A lack of money is a symptom of something bigger, deeper that's going on under the surface. Okay. That was pretty profound. I love that thought. So here's another one, and this is kind of out of, not in a logical sequence, but I wanted to touch on this one. What you hear, you forget. What you see, you remember. And what you do, you understand. So that really speaks to action. And we talk a lot about that here, is taking action, right? So then he gets into this formula, okay? This is where it really starts getting fun. Thoughts, feelings, actions, results. Okay, if I were to put a formula up, I wasn't a math major, didn't do very well in math, but if I did T plus F plus A equals R, it's going to stand for thoughts plus feelings plus actions equals results. And it's in sequential order. So it's not even a plus necessarily. It's thoughts lead to feelings, which lead to actions, because we always do what we feel like doing. and that our actions produce our results. So that's the sequential order of our lives. This is how we live. Okay. But if we were to take the very first one, the thoughts, and you ask yourself, well, where do our thoughts come from in the first place? Like now we're going deep. We're going down under the surface, way down into the roots, way down into like not even the main roots, but the offshoots, the little hairs, right? This is where the minerals are absorbed from the soil. And I don't even know how roots work, but I do know they take nourishment from the soil somehow. They absorb it, you water it, and they grab the minerals or whatever they're called from the soil, and it nourishes the tree, right? So where do our thoughts come from? And that's the word programming. Programming. This is our program. You've heard a lot of people maybe talk about our programming. Well, programming leads to thoughts, which leads to our feelings, which leads to our actions, and ultimately our results. So where does it all start? Where do our thoughts even start? Is our programming. So let's talk about our programming. Sound important to you? Okay, this is getting at the heart of the matter. Okay, remember, it's not the money that's the problem. Money is the symptom of a bigger problem. This is what we're talking about, how we think and how we show up and how we've been influenced and how our thoughts are being influenced. So this is called our programming. So there's different types of programming. I'm not going to go over this. There's verbal programming and there's modeling, verbal. Well, I actually will go. I'll just touch on this really quick. Verbal programming. When you were raised, did you ever hear any words like this? Money is the root of all evil. Save your money for a rainy day. Rich people are greedy. Rich people are criminals. Filthy rich. Anybody ever hear that phrase? Filthy rich. Why are we associating wealth with filth? And we're putting it into a phrase. Money doesn't grow on trees. Money doesn't buy happiness. The rich get richer and the poor get poorer. Anyways, on and on. There's so many things we say. And we don't stop and question them. We just accept them. Why? Because everybody else says them. And so we feel like we're kind of part of everybody else when we accept a belief that's kind of a collective subconscious of our society, even though it may be 100% false. Or whether it's false or not isn't even an issue, isn't even the question. It may not serve us to think that way. So that's the verbal programming, what we say. And I'll ask you this, what do you say to yourself when you have a bad appointment, when you have a no-show, when something goes wrong? What are your thoughts? What are your verbal words? I mean, the way that you think is you talking to yourself, whether it comes out your mouth or not. It's your program. It's part of your language to yourself. And what are you saying? Okay, so that's the first one. The second one is modeling, where we follow the example, and we're programmed from day one, from birth, by our parents. We're influenced by coaches. We're influenced by our relatives. We're influenced by our friends, right? Our neighbors. There's people in our lives that influence our lives in different ways. And that all shapes our programming. Our programming is deep-rooted belief systems that come from others. Either we accept it because it sounds good, or we heard it enough that we didn't even question it. We just accepted into our inner circle because, I don't know, maybe it sounded good. Maybe it rhymed. And so, we just like it. And so we just never stop to question, why am I believing that? Why don't I change how I think about wealth, about money, about rich people, about taxes, about your circumstances, anything, insert here. Why don't I change how I think? Because obviously the way I'm thinking now and my current programming isn't serving me. Look at the results. Okay, case in point, look around. Are you happy with the results in your life? Are you wanting something more? You have created to this point a total sum of all of the actions, thoughts, feelings, and all that programming that we talked about up till this point in your life. That's what you see as manifested in physical material around you. Your home, your car, your lifestyle, your work, your happiness, your energy, it all comes from all of that. So if you want to change tomorrow, we start changing those things today. Then you got to be patient, right? I love the analogy of a gardener again. I keep going back to planting and gardening and growing because you plant a seed, you don't expect fruit right away. You got to nourish that seed, and it's going to take some time. And you got to be consistent. You got to go out there every day and water it, right? I mean, on and on until 30, 60, 90 days, whenever the gestation period is, it grows, it produces, your little squash or whatever comes out, and you can have a meal. Well, same thing. When we're changing our programming, we're planting seeds and we're nourishing those seeds. And those seeds are changing and growing. And a lot of times, for the first quite a while, it's all below the surface. It hasn't even sprouted yet, but it's happening, right? Maybe you're in that phase. Maybe you haven't sprouted yet, but that seed is catching hold. And it just takes a little time. So the comfort in that is, as long as you know you're on the right track, be patient. Be patient as much as you need, because being on the right track is what counts most. Now you just got to keep going forward. So love this. I'm going to end here. Okay. And there's a lot more. So I'm going to do a few more of these, few more episodes dedicated to this book. But his main point he makes here towards the end of this section is to study yourself. Study yourself. Where have you heard that? I'm like, that is so cool. Like, we get it caught up in math and English and science. Well, how about you? What better topic could there be to learn about? Not in an arrogant way, but to learn about how you work. Study yourself. A lot of times we don't even slow down enough to do the hard work on ourselves because we're focused on other external things, right? And so we, definition of insanity, keep doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results. Okay, let's get back to programming. This is profound. I'm not even going to try and rephrase it. He says it so eloquently. Here's what he says. This is page 46 if you've got the book. Once you are conscious, you can think, you're aware and you are studying yourself. You can see your programming for what it is. Simply a recording of information you received and believed in the past when you were too young to know any better. Okay. Now, hear me on this one. This is the key right here. You can see that this conditioning is not who you are, but who you learned to be. Oh, wow. Right? This conditioning is not who you are, but who you learned to be, good or bad. You can see that you are not the recording, you are the recorder. You are not the content in the glass, but the glass itself. Wow. Right? Now that separates you from your results. So now you can go to work on changing you so that you get different results. You are not your results. You are who you are, and the results are a product of who you are. Okay, let me continue. This is just mind-blowing. In our courses, we teach that no thought lives in your head rent-free. No thought lives in your head rent-free. Each thought you have will either be an investment or a cost. It will either move you toward happiness and success or away from it. It will either empower you or disempower you. That's why it's imperative you choose your thoughts and your beliefs wisely. And he ends on this. This is where I'm going to wrap up too, just for now. We're going to do more on this book, but just for now, because I'm running out of time. But this last thought, nothing has meaning except for the meaning you give it. Now think about that for a second. Nothing has meaning until you assign it. Circumstances, things that happen to us, these are neutral. They don't have meaning. In fact, go with me on this, just hang with me for a little bit. Death itself. Let's go extreme. We're all life insurance agents. Let's talk about death for a second. Is death sad? Is death happy? Death is death. We make it sad and we make it happy. How? By the thoughts we assign to it. Your mom passed away. Well, I'm never going to see her again. There's the thought. Death itself was the occurrence. The thought I attached to it, now I'm never going to see her again. Now I'm starting to think of all the things I should have said and done. What is my emotion? I'm sad. I carry regret. I carry guilt because I assigned those thoughts to a neutral event. Okay? People die every day. They die all over the world. Why do we all not walk around crying all the time? because we're not attached to those people. When we're sad, I'm sure, if we found out their story, but the story we tell ourselves is what causes the emotion. Same thing is true with everything. So if you are looking around and you're discouraged or you're sad or you're whatever, it's not the circumstances causing that. It's your reaction to those circumstances. Your circumstances are neutral. They are what they are. It's data. It's data from your past that's showing you a blueprint of how and where you are right now. That's all that is. So you look at your circumstances and we think, how awful, how terrible, I'm not where I want to be, this or that. Well, that is where it gets sad, is because we now just assigned an emotion to those circumstances. Instead, look at circumstances as neutral and assign a positive reaction to make it positive for you. I'll give you an example. I talked about this in the last podcast. Maybe your past is full of failure. You haven't won a single thing you've touched. You haven't had any kind of wins. Well, you know what? That's gotten to where you are right now. And maybe, if nothing else, that past full of failures is the thing that's pushed you to now you're ready to take action and make change. Now, instead of your past being a curse, it's a blessing, because it's the thing that got you to move and take action, right? Now, I'm making all that up. I don't know if that's true or not, but all I'm saying is, if you look at your past as neutral, you can assign whether or not you want that to be a positive thing for a blessing in your life, or a negative thing to be a curse. So anyways, I'm going to stop there. Thank you for listening, and go out and apply some of these principles. And I hope you have a wonderful week. Take care.